Hello everyone, this is Mini Ninja speaking. Actually taking a little bit of time out of the Canadian Thanksgiving holiday here to talk to you a little bit about the Demoniacal Fit Royal Blood figure, aka the possessed horse slash really mad Marco take on the unofficial form that is Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta. And for those that aren't familiar and didn't catch when I mentioned this in the previous Kong one, of course, this form, of course, never really appeared in any of the official anime or manga appearances, and is pretty much something only relegated and only appearing in certain video games, including, I believe, the Budokai games from the PS2 era, as we notice this typo right on the box, talking about an entirely different toy. As we get this one out of the box, though, you can see it's actually pretty chock full with a few different accessories, namely 4 different faces on top of the ones that are on the figure itself, a bunch of different hands, and one effect piece, which I believe actually doesn't appear with any Vegeta figure before, and is actually a recolored one from the Vegito figure. Speaking of the devil, looking at the height here, you can see it stands at, I'm going to say, about 5 3/4 inches tall when you get it standing up here, and upon handling the figure handling it right out of the clamshell, overall, it's not too bad, but it's generally what you might expect, considering that this is the same body bulk that was also used for the Proud Prince and a bunch of other figures up to this point. Namely, the main body itself is pretty self-sufficient. Head itself is actually really nicely sculpted on there, if a little pointy on the actual hair bits itself, so just watch your fingers there. But it is worth noting there are a few odd quirks I noticed here compared to the Proud Prince one. Namely, there is a little bit of residue on the butterfly joints on both sides on this one. Might be from something from packaging and doesn't seem to affect the actual usability of the joints, but it's worth noting. Ab crunch is about standard compared to where it was on that and the official figure. The waist itself, much like the Proud Prince, is a little thinner than it should be, but it's still suffice and functional. It's just worth noting for those that were familiar with any issues with the previous one, the Proud Prince, just be careful how you turn it. While mine is functioning just fine here, I know that one had some issues where the peg in the middle actually snapped, so just be careful. In terms of the arms, the shoulder bicep swivel is maybe a little tight on both ends, but that's nothing that didn't kind of wear out or come back to normal with a little bit more usage. And same with the legs. Excellent splits, everything's pretty fine, moved back and forward pretty well in that case, everything's pretty good and standard, and it's fairly fluid moving, which is technically both a good and a bad thing, as I'll be explaining later on. In terms of the knee bend, everything is pretty much standard, everything's in good shape. Ankles, they're pretty much standard Vegeta ones, which means they're pretty limited in range on that one. In fact, that one on the I believe that's the right foot, is a little stiff if anything there, and the one on the left is honestly, it moves just fine, and the toe joints are fully functional, which are a nice thing to have. All in all, though, the main body is pretty much the same thing you saw in the Proud Prince, and that is both a good and a bad thing, because while you have it on that toy where you have a much lighter head, it works just fine. And as you can see, I can get this figure to stand up just fine. That being said, this will become a little more of an issue later. Before we get to that part, though, let's have a side-by-side of the original Majin Vegeta figure on the left there, as well as the Proud Prince on the right. Which you can kind of see there is, despite the fact that they're pretty much based on the same body, Royal Blood borrows the color scheme much closer to the original figure as opposed to the Proud Prince does. And as we put them side by side with the Kong figure, well, in terms of the head sculpt, I'm sorry to say, if you're looking for something that is closer to the more mainstream figures, this one is a no contest. The Demoniacal Fit head sculpt there is much, much closer to a more standard SH figure art toy. Although, if we're trying to be fair and balanced here, it is also much easier to balance the Kong toy as opposed to the Demoniacal Fit one here, as the way the hair is set up, it's just a much closer center of gravity that is easier to keep a hold of. Whereas for the Demoniacal Fit one, for Royal Blood here, I kind of have to have it on a forward tilt because, as I was mentioning earlier, once you start getting the joints moving, especially on the legs, they're a little too fluid. We'll take a quick look at the back there to just kind of see the modus operandi. The hair on the back is much shorter on the DF figure as opposed to the Kong one, and not as detailed. But it's a lot closer when you put it here with the official Super Saiyan 3 Goku, which I bit the bullet and picked up on once it became available because I could never get any of those bootlegs to work. And as you can see, these two absolutely look like they belong in the same line. The hair on the Vegeta one might be a little bit shorter, but in terms of the general handling of details and even the hair gleam to a certain extent, while not quite as glossy as the re-released Goku here, it still honestly looks like it belongs to the same line. It could pass for official product in that sense. Unfortunately, unlike the Super Saiyan 3 Goku here, the leg joints on Vegeta, I had not even been handling the toy that long into this particular recording for this video here, but as you can see, I am already struggling in order to keep him upright. What I would have to say is, though, if you were to pick this one up, much like for the Goku figure, you want to have him with a stand handy in order to just help balance out the head, because while the body overall is the same thing as the Proud Prince, they just both have way too much trouble standing up on their... And here's when they look like not falling down. Moving on to the accessory portion of our video here, Vegeta actually comes with quite a few of them. Namely, aside from the neutral face that the toy comes with by standard, he has 4 different expressions to go along with that. Namely, this kind of grimacing expression, a bit of a yelling power-up expression, which, let's take a quick look at the gradient on the hair, by the way, as well as the decals. Everything is really nicely handled in terms of the facial details. All in all, I'm quite happy with that. You have a smirking expression, because you can't have a Vegeta without a smirk. I believe there's a law somewhere about that. And a what-if on a what-if, Super Saiyan 3 Imagine Vegeta. Weird flex, but okay, let's go with it. In terms of how these figures, the faces switch out, honestly, they go on pretty well with those little tabs that are on the back of the head or their hair piece on there. Namely, you pull them off with a little bit of effort, and then you push the new face on there, and they will just click on there because there are little tabs on the actual back of the head itself. So, all in all, those faces tend to stay on there pretty well. I'd almost say they actually work better than the original Super Saiyan 3 figure, which this is loosely based off of. So, all in all, very pleasant surprise. Everything works in there, and honestly looks really nice. Let's get Vegeta standing back up here again so we can take a look at the other stuff, which are pretty much the wide assortment of Vegeta hands. You'll have to forgive me if I kind of glaze over these ones a bit, because honestly, most of these are your standard Vegeta hands for the most part. Namely, you got your open palm glass, or open hole blasting hands, you got your kind of martial arts grip stuff on there, a little more of a different kind of open palm glass, or kind of a charging one usually used for his final flash or something along those lines. And for the most part, as you can kind of guess, these are standard Vegeta stuff. It's hard to comment on it because unless they screw up, which they absolutely did not, these hands all fit and go on and off the pegs just fine. There's not really much to talk about. They're pretty well handled. Now, what's worth noting is this effect piece is actually, as like I said earlier, a recolored version of what was used for Vegeta Blue for the official figure, only it's covered purple this time, kind of to go as either a Gallic Gun effect or Final Flash. Although I think in this case, it really is more of a Gallic Gun. Now, how this effect works is that it pegs into one of the open hands here, which we're going to be demonstrating in a second, as we show how the hands switch on there. And there's actually a little transparent peg that goes from the effect itself into the hand, which has a little bit of a swivel space on itself, which makes it a little easier to go on that because thankfully it is a nice solid bit. It's not overly firm, but it's not spongy like I've seen on some of the other official Vegeta effects up to this point. As you can kind of figure out, if it wasn't for the fact that the legs got a little bit loose after handling, this toy would be effectively perfect as far as I'm concerned. You have something where the detailing and the paint honestly meshes well enough that it fits in with the mainline toys themselves. You have something with a lot of accessories, different play paints, and even a nice effect piece for good measure. It's a really nice toy to display and work with. Only thing I'd say, you need a stand for this toy, especially at the standing, just because the hair, much like the real Super Saiyan 3 Goku figure, is a bit heavy. I think that's all I need to say on this one, folks. Thanks for watching. Once again, happy Canadian Thanksgiving for those that might be celebrating, and I'll catch you all later. Take care.